Live from San Francisco on a Friday afternoon, the 9th of May. Welcome to our show number 832. We're live from Studio B here at the Beach Street Yacht Club in San Francisco's beautiful Marina District. My co-host, Julia Vedekint, Commodore of the Beach Street Yacht Club, longtime member of St. Francis, which we sometimes refer to as St. Fancy.
Yes, you do. I don't.
You don't? You'd get in trouble if you did.
Yeah, I know.
I'm your host, Tom Eamon. Thank you for joining us yet again. We do this every Tuesday and Friday, as most of you will know, at 1300 Pacific, 1 p.m. Pacific. And today's show is going to be fabulous. We have a great guest standing patiently by in Boston. Mark Holland, whom some of you will remember from our shows, the America's Cup watch parties. Mark was one of our experts on.
Oh, yes.
From, when he was in Boston, we're here in San Francisco. We were doing the watch parties of the racing in Barcelona. At the starting line today, happy Friday and happy Testament to Peace, Unity, and Cooperation Day. Where, Julia? Any
Worldwide.
idea?
Worldwide.
Well, why not? We got a new pope. We might as well have peace, unity, and cooperation, right? We have memes of the day. Speaking of the new pope, we'll get into those at the top of the show in the A block. Coaching corner super Fozy John Emmett, who is a champion not only of master sailing, but also of his mom, Marilyn. He took her sailing today.
Terrific.
He took her sailing, and I have the video.
Oh, I'm proud of both of them.
Oh, it's fabulous. Update, the IQ Foil Internationals, the youth games are going on at Italy's beautiful Lake Garda. Mm-hmm. And then the aforementioned Mark Holland is live from Boston with his comprehensive new, very cool AC Compendium, it's called. And he's going to tell us all about that and how you might even get a hold of a copy yourself. The AC History Challenge, the promise now for several shows. I've got Ed Worley's latest Cup trivia teaser all teed up. It's called Up in Smoke. Alistair Murray also with a terrific tribute to Meetong Yacht Club's annual Easter Regatta a couple weeks ago. What a nice video that is. I told you about the IQ foils. We're actually going to run that in last leg, along with the 2025 Trey Golfi Sailing Week in Italy there in and around Naples, which is somewhat, maybe not just somewhat, maybe at the top of the America's Cup venue list now, Julia.
Is it?
As we told you, that was not likely to be in Greece, and we broke that news here, and maybe it is going to be in Italy after all.
Wouldn't that be good?
It would be. A lot of people like the Day in History, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, our fantastic Fozy, and more. Speaking of which, we have memes of the week, Julia. This got a lot of comment on my Facebook page. This courtesy of Rick Bannero, as you will see there.
Yeah.
And that kicked it off. When that came, I posted on my Facebook. They started a stream in here from the various corners of the world about our new pope.
Yes.
This was the first one. Before we had a decision, before we had the white smoke, there was the black smoke, of course. Then there were other smokes, including this one.
Missed that one.
That came from Mr. Dr. Andrew McIrvin. Said, I think there's panic in Rome, a gay panic with the pride flag. Mm-hmm. Then this one came through. This, of course, after that meme of Donald Trump dressed up in Pope regalia. Mm-hmm. Then yet another one came through from Bannero. This, of course, is Snoop Dogg, the famous American and beyond. He was big in the Olympics, at least in the NBC telecast, walking in with the Cardinals and a bit of
hot.
A little weed there, Julia.
Yes.
Huh?
Yeah.
That's Rick Bannero sent that one, as did Matt Suzuki, as did a number of others. And then, Julia, we were watching that the other day, and you were upstairs in the Commodore's suite. We were texting back and forth.
Yeah.
And I said, it's the Italian. The Italian had walked out, but he was just out to make the announcement and kind of do in Latin, the announcement.
Yeah.
And okay, now who's it going to be? It's not if it's not him, is it going to be? Tell me who?
Yeah.
The Filipino? Is it going to be one of the Africans? Is it going to be who? And out came the American, to everyone's, including and especially my utter astonishment.
Yes.
That it was this guy from Chicago. I say this guy. He's now was some. We should show some respect.
Yes.
Pope Leopold Leo the 14th, right?
Right.
And immediately more memes came through. This from Stingray said, "Is Rome ready to embrace deep dish pizza?" You get that? Chicago. Deep dish pizza. That came from Stingray. And then that crowd, I mean, the crowd was wildly enthusiastic. I'm not sure they cared whether it was an American Pope or anybody else, but just to have a decision.
Yes.
And to be there when the decision came down. But I think part of the reason the gentleman from Chicago is the Pope is because he's also considered Peruvian.
Yes.
Right? He was head of the archdiocese there for quite some time. There is the Peruvian national flag, Julia.
Yes.
Just for you.
Great.
And then the memes kept flowing. Next up was this, the Vatican after electing an American Pope. Vatican Square. That came from Sangmeister. Thanks, John, for sending that. Then, of course, several of you, including John Emmett, said this. Donald Trump's tariffs are so effective that now even popes are made in America. John Emmett sent that, and I think that's a good way to wrap that up.
That occurred to me during this process.
Well, everybody did. Okay, let's get into what are we celebrating today, Julia?
World peace.
World peace. It's actually Europe Day, believe it or not.
Okay.
And Europe Day is a thing. It's a significant now, having lived in Europe for 20 years, I don't remember any celebration of Europe Day ever, either in Germany or in Spain, where we lived in the 2000s and 2010s. Europe Day is a significant celebration in Europe, so says Days of the Year website, marked by two different dates to honor peace and unity. The Council of Europe observes it on May 5th, commemorating the date of its foundation in 1949, the Council of Europe, which you hardly hear of any of these days. But the European Union, on the other hand, celebrates it today, May 9th. This date is chosen to remember the Schuman Declaration of 1950, a proposal by French Foreign Minister Robert Schuman, which was essentially the foundational idea for what would eventually become the EU. His idea was for European countries to manage their coal and steel production together, preventing war between them. Yeah, right. This plan laid the groundwork for what would eventually become the European Union. 1985 leaders in Milan decided to officially recognize May 9th as Europe Day, emphasizing its importance in representing peace and unity on the continent, which, of course, Julia, includes Ukraine and Russia.
Yes.
Right? Russia's in Europe. They'd like to think of themselves as being Europe. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're celebrating today, right, Julia?
Correct.
We're also celebrating, as always, our FOSI far and wide. Those of you who support the show, those of you who come on the show, so those of you who watch regularly, we appreciate each and every one of you, especially the people who contribute financially, but also contribute to the show with content. Content contributors. If you want to contribute, give us a few bucks a month, patreon.com/join/Sailing Illustrated. Thanks for your support. Speaking of FOSI, Bravo Zulu, congratulations to Super FOSI Rick Bannerow of Connecticut, just down the street from where our guest Mark Holland is seated near Boston. But Bannerow in Connecticut is a super snapper. We've had him on the show several times. He now has 15 of the last 16 covers, his photos do, of Windcheck magazine, that esteemed, that super good sailing magazine that covers particularly the northeast of this country. Bravo Zulu.
That's great.
He's every snapper wants to have their work on the covers of magazines, and Rick is doing it in spades. This comment came through from FOSI Jeff Ogle, and he said, "Real sailboats are cool." Mm-hmm. And that was on my Facebook page in reaction to that post earlier. Mm-hmm. John Emmett Sailing, he's on. Emmett is saying peace and unity is very important. It was the focus on the piece I recorded today.
Aha.
He recorded a piece which we will air on Tuesday because we have a couple other submissions from John. Hamish Ross reminding us that 30 years ago, today on the 9th of May, New Zealand 32 defeated S&S in race 3 in the America's Cup. Do you think that's lost on me, Hamish? I will be covering that in this day in history. A Cubed defeated El Moro in race 2 of the 92 match. On a sad note, Andrew Simpson lost his life in San Francisco. Yes, that also happened on this day in the lead up to the America's Cup here 2013. Sad day indeed.
Yes.
America's Cup Compendium is what we're going to have Mark Holland talking about in a few minutes. Delighted to have him with us, standing by outside Boston in Methuen, and he will tell us about that after we get through John Emmett's piece here. We love to do John at the top of the show. I'm not sure I said that properly. We love to do John at the top of the show. We love to have John on the show and him run it at the top. Coaching Corner with Super Fozy, John Emmett. Now, just as a bit of geographical coordination guidance, he is sailing today, or was sailing earlier, at the out of the Crawley Mariners Yacht Club. There you can see, I think on the map, right there, which is just east of London's Gatwick Airport near his family farm. And he was there, and he took his mother for a sail at the Crawley Mariners Yacht Club. That's the view of that beautiful little club. We've featured it. I don't know if we've actually featured the club before, but I think John learned to sail there, or at least in part there. It's on a lake called Hedgecourt Lake, as I said, just east of that airport. And here is another look on their opening day, or what they call their open day, which is, I guess, more of an open house, which was a 3 weeks ago. Nice mixture of one design boats. There's an albacore in the left foreground. I haven't seen an albacore in a long, long time. There's a fair few of those in Ontario and Canada, and we had a couple on our little lake in Michigan growing up. And the various other boats, including this boat, which apparently belongs to Maryland, and John took his mum for a sail today.
This is Mum finally sailing a 13. Look, your jib's flapping, Mum. So I think this is the first time this boat's sailed for quite a long time, to say the least. But it's probably the first time Mum's sailed in quite a long time as well. But there we go. Nice to be back on Hedgecourt Lake.
Now, I don't think we'll make any criticism about the tack of the sail, the mainsail not being tied down. He was criticizing his mother for the jib flapping.
Yes.
He called it flapping.
Yes.
Not luffing, but I think they're sailing so far downwind that the jib's almost ready to backwind and come back across. But in any event, John, it was a great video. Very nice of you, the gentleman that you are, to take your mom sailing today. And by the way, Mother's Day is not this Sunday in the UK. It was in March. Different countries celebrate Mother's Day at different times, which I'm sure you knew, having gone to Stanford.
Oh, yes. I didn't know exactly when, but there are lots, almost every country has a Mother's Day.
Indeed. Well, that was today. That's John and his mom, Marilyn, who, by the way, is 80.
Good.
So, Julie, you ought to be out on the boat sailing. Next time we get Emmett to San Francisco, we'll have him take you sailing in something small and wet.
Oh, I don't sail small
on San
and wet.
Francisco Bay.
I take medium size and windy.
You should never sail anything shorter in length than your age. You belong on an 86-footer, Julia.
Oh, I do. Yeah.
John Emmett also, he didn't submit this video. He did submit another one, which I'll run on Tuesday. It's 9 minutes long, and he talks about peace and unity and another number of other things. Cool time. And he recorded it at the family farm yesterday, I guess it was. I'll run that on Tuesday. But earlier this week on his YouTube channel, I saw this video talking about masters sailing, which is a great thing for our sport, and John celebrates it in this video.
My name is John Emmett, and I've been racing in the Ilka Master Series for over a decade. So I thought it was well worth explaining what this is. Now, sailing is a sport, and that basically means in medium to strong winds, the harder you work, the faster you go. And so as you get older, that becomes more difficult. So for anyone over the age of 30, you're entitled to come and do masters competitions, both nationally and internationally. And we actually have age categories from 30 to 45, then after 45 every 10 years, right up to the aptly named legends who are over 75 years of age. And for me, watching 80-year-old guys still battling an Ilkley around a racecourse, it's just amazing. And I think we've learned a lot about sailing in the last 10 years, and the pandemic and mental health just showed us how important it is to get outside in the open air, and being a little bit biased, there's no better place to do that than to be on the water. We have a variety of events both inland and on the sea, and probably one of the most important things is the camaraderie, the social aspect of the sport, which I cannot sell enough. I mean, there's people who've been racing against each other 20, 40 years. I mean, come on, how good is that? Sailing might not be a sport for everyone, but anyone can do it. And whether you're at the front of the fleet, and we've got past Olympians doing the Masters Series, or whether you just want to turn up to have a few beers and a bit of time on the water, absolutely everybody's welcome. In fact, the international competitions such as the Worlds and European Championships are so popular, we have to run a qualification series, and that's what the Masters National Opens are for. So it's really good practice if you want to come and sail against the best of the best, but it's also a lot of fun. And I really encourage people just to come out and try the events, because everybody who comes has a really good time and always comes back for more. So the Master Series is there to help people sail against people their own age, but a lot of people will also do the Open Series as well. The class, the ILCA, is very welcoming, and it's a single-handed class for junior sailors, Olympic class for women, Olympic class for men, and the Master Series. So we really do encourage everybody to come and join us, and that's why we have families and multiple generations of people sailing at ILCA class. So if you haven't been to a Masters event before, please do check it out, and we would love to see you on the water very soon.
And thank you, John, for that. We like to say at the end of John's segment always that it's important for all of us to be promoting getting our sport, parasailing, back into the Brisbane Olympics as a demonstration event, at least. It's not going to come in as a regular parasport, but at least as a demonstration event. So you Aussies, get it together. Alistair Murray is helping to lead the charge down there, and the folks in Brisbane to put it in. That is us sailing in as a demonstration event for the 2032 Olympics. And then they will be in regularly after that. We used to be, but we fell off the bed for parasailing. John Emmett, get to the front of the fleet. John Emmett Sailing, our regular coaching corner. Thanks, John. We'll have a good long segment from him on Tuesday. This AC Compendium is the theme of our show. We have our guest, Mark Holland, standing by. We'll be to him in a moment. But again, we want to talk again about Long Beach. How many times can I say again? Mm-hmm. That was the venue for the Congressional Cup last week that we featured extensively on this show. It is also to be, it better be, it must be the venue for the 2028 Olympics, where also the Olympic sailing took place in 1932 and in 1984. It was a fabulous venue. In the background is the Port of Long Beach and then the Port of LA on the other side of that spit. And Long Beach is correct. The politicians who want to move it, the local politicians in LA, including and especially the gentleman who represents this district in and around the Port of LA, he wants to move the sailing there. That is Croutonic. Ping the World Sailing CEO, David.Graham. If you would, please send him an email, david.graham@sailing.org, and tell him that it is correct in Long Beach and incorrect, a.k.a. Croutonic, in San Pedro. San Pedro! The LA Yacht Club is apparently behind the scenes pushing it, as well as they are situated, their clubhouses, in the LA Basin, the LA Port of LA Basin. There's the Commodore, Marjorie Urban. I don't know the lady. Apparently she's got a heart of gold. Commodore at layachtclub.org. Please write her and say, Commodore, come on, help push the Olympics and keep the Olympics where they have been designated to take place since the get-go, that is in Long Beach. And it's only of late that some politicians, one in particular, want to move it to the Port of LA. We are also concerned, and there was a dinner at New York Yacht Club the other night. New York Yacht Club very kindly hosted World Sailing's executive board and some senior serious U.S. sailing delegates in a big dinner, and while World Sailing is having their meetings at 44th Street in Manhattan.
Wow.
And the president, Quan Hai Lee, who of course is from China, was very close-lipped about this venue thing when he was approached by some people who were there. It's not a done deal yet, but World Sailing needs to come down hard, firm and hard on the side of Long Beach. And any of you that can have any influence through your governing bodies, through your class associations, particularly the Olympic classes, please do, because that is correct, and it's for the good of the sport, and especially the sailors.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay, FB is glitchy for some reason. When I post a comment, the feed freezes. Well, redo your, sometimes Alan Long, you've got to reboot or just, you clear your cache. Clear your cache. How's your cache, Julia?
Clear.
Have you cleared your cache lately? Okay.
Actually, I did yesterday, which is strange.
Clear your cache, Alan Long. How many Lipton trophies are there?
Lots.
The truth is there are a lot of Lipton trophies. Sir Thomas Lipton, who we're also going to talk about today later in the show, he went around this country, and I'm sure other places in the world, but he went around this country and literally seeded Lipton cups, Lipton trophies. There's one here on the bay. There's one that's, in fact, maybe the most famous in this country is down in San Diego, the Lipton Cup, the Lipton Trophy down there, which is an inter-yacht club event, annual inter-yacht club event. Very cool. There's one in Colorado, believe it or not, in Denver, on one of the reservoirs there.
Something like 16.
Is that right?
I can't remember, but...
Well, there's a number of them. So there are a number of Lipton Cups. What would happen if Tom had his own time zone? Well, we do have our own time zone. It's called Pacific Daylight Time this time of year,
right.
Gordon Smith. What happened, Julia, on this day in history, the 9th of May, 1386?
Oh, my gosh.
And this weaves together with what day it is in Europe. Here's your first clue. Here's your second clue.
That's the Popes.
No, it's not the Popes, and it's not apropos the Popes or the naming of the election of the new Pope. It's apropos in a small way this European Unity Day. Here's another flag for you. Do you recognize that flag?
Switzerland.
No.
The Red Cross is in Switzerland?
Switzerland is red with a white cross. That's white with a red cross. Baton Rouge says there's Lipton trophies at the Southern Yacht Clubs, a couple of which were lost during it. Yep, there's Portugal. No, not the formulation. Oh, man, they're rolling in here now. Not the formulation of Portugal. Portugal something. Yes, that's the flag on the right. What's the flag on the left? Blake Middleton's got it. Hooray, Blake. England and Portugal formally ratify their alliance with the signing of the Treaty of Windsor, making it the oldest diplomatic alliance in the world, which is still in force. In 1386, that is a painting, obviously, of the Duke of Lancaster. That's the English flag, Julia.
Congratulations, Blake. Yeah.
English flag, the English Duke dining with the King of Portugal, who's there in the center. And indeed, it's the world's oldest treaty it happens to be between Portugal and England. It's ratified at Windsor, cementing and strengthening ties between the two kingdoms. The treaty guarantees the mutual security of both nations and strengthens commercial ties. It is the oldest diplomatic alliance still in force, apparently consummated. How's that for a good word, Julia?
Good one, yeah.
On the 9th of May, 1386.
Does that had something to do with the I'm thinking of the treaty which led the French to have access to the eastern coast? God.
Julia?
Uh-oh.
You've gone off.
I have. I'm sorry.
On a senior moment, deep dive here.
Yeah.
But there's another thing that happened, as Hamish pointed out at the top of the show. There's your first and only clue. Hamish has already spilled the beans. But on this day of the 9th of May, it was the third race of the 1995 America's Cup. I was with Team Dennis Conner. We were sailing Young America in that match. The team was, I was the rules advisor following around on the rubber boat, the chase boat, right behind the match. And it was a few minutes into this third race on the 9th of May, 30 years ago today, Julia.
Wow.
That we knew we were cooked. It was a little bit lighter regime, and we thought, well, maybe we'll be better on this day than we were in the first two races, and it was not to be the case. Russell and Co. won all 5 races, and will celebrate their win. The first time the Kiwis won the Cup, in fact, as Mark Holland will tell you in a moment when we get to his compendium. And the Kiwis now have won it 5 times since that famous infamous, in my opinion, 1995 America's Cup match in San Diego. 5-0. Oh, it was brutal. A brutal win. Now let's get to Mark Holland, standing patiently by in Methuen, which is just outside Boston. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Thomas. I appreciate it.
I'm going to put a map up here, and you can explain to everybody where Methuen, Massachusetts is.
That's just about perfect. It's just north of Boston on 93, and we're 25 minutes from downtown Boston. It works out really well, and not too far from Newburyport and some good it's good sailing out that way. So
well, we think of the North Shore, Lynn, Salem, Beverly, and Marblehead up here, and then that's also kind of southeast of you. You say
right.
You're up by Lawrence, Lowell, Mass, Andover. What is that?
Exactly.
It's a half an hour up 93.
Yeah.
Into downtown Boston, not at rush hour.
Yep. Quick shot, and it's about 2 hours and 10 minutes from Newport, which is what we really gauge things by.
Yeah, there's Newport down at the. If I remove the lower third here, you can see down at the very bottom of that map. There's Newport, Rhode Island. Almost people don't realize it's almost due south of Boston.
Yep.
And Cape Cod is out here, of course, and then down past the south coast of Connecticut, down toward New York City. And it's a famously good sailing area and famously cool part of the world if you are, in fact, water-oriented. How did you end up in Boston?
Well, I was born in Springfield, which is just west of Boston, and I grew up in Winchester, which is just a suburb. And my wife was from Lawrence originally, so back 107 years ago now we were married and we moved up there. We've been here since, but it's nice. Methuen is a great. Still call it a town, but it's technically it's a city, and we do pretty well. It's quiet, good services, and all wonderful. So
well, it's a beautiful part of the world for sure. And I lived in Newport, as I guess you know, for the better part of a decade, and I used to get up to Boston regularly to referee hockey.
Mm-hmm.
So I know at least how to get to the arenas, Harvard and BC, BU, and Northeastern and so on. But even up by you, there's some hockey rinks. We used to go up there and referee Division II tournaments and so on. But let's get on to sailing here, because you've done something called the Compendium, the America's Cup Compendium, including the Pell Cup and the Citizens Trophy and the LV Cup and the Prada Cups. And you can find out, those of you watching can find out more about it at americascupcompendium.com. How did this all come about, Mark?
Well, back in when I was a kid, probably 10 or 11 years old, my grandmother found a half hull that was in like an antique store and brought it home. I put it on my wall right above my school desk, and it was one of those things that I always appreciated, and so I started collecting them. I started collecting half hulls, and a lot of them were Dennis Conner kind of excited purchases where he was doing so well in the 80s, and so I started to collect Stars and Stripes models and what have you. And so I ended up with, now looking around, I've got 110 models, including the one behind me, for Courageous, and a lot of full rigged America's Cup yachts. But when I when I was looking around, I said, I'd love to index these, at least for insurance purposes, if nothing else. And so I started to make a list of them. And then I said, well, let me find out what their history is. So I started going into the history. And this was just before COVID hit, and I was still working. I was an architect for FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency. So I had little time on my hands, but as we got to COVID, I retired, and I said, well, let me start to do something here with indexing these and find out something about them. And it was interesting because and I use the term rabbit hole. Because I got into this thing where I'd find out a little bit of information, and there's a missing hole. There's a missing thing. It's not, it's not all there. And so I started to do more and more research and try to get as much information on these yachts as I could. And what I found was that there were a tremendous number of books that were written. There are probably almost 300 full books that are written on America Cup races, but the data is missing, or it's just scattered. So I started to put it together, and I was able to retire from FEMA on leap year day in 2021. And which was February 29th. And that was just about the same week, roughly, that the COVID lockdown started. So I had nothing else to do, so I started to work on it. And I wasn't intending to have it go as massive as it did, Tom. It has turned into, as we show here on this great graphic, there are 15, actually there will be 16 volumes of information, and they go through, each one is divided up into a separate subject matter, but they're all, they go all the way back to 1848 or 50 or 51, depending on when that era was started. But they basically try to explain what went on in comparison, and so we ended up with, as I said, 16 volumes, and there's almost 2,550 pages right now, and there are 3 volumes still to go. But you would ask me yesterday when we were talking, what. When you print it, it looks like this. It's like, it's huge. So I said, well, there's got to be a better way of doing it, because again, looking back in my old childhood days, my mother bought and I think we all probably had them, a subscription to Encyclopedia Britannica.
Yeah, indeed.
where every month we get a volume, and for like whatever it was, 27 years, whatever, however long it took to get them all. But as soon as you got them, they were stale. The information was dead. It was old. It was out of date and what have you. And then you get the little updates. So I said, well, there's got to be another way of doing this. And I looked into online. We're into some cool magical stuff online. So there's a platform called Issuu, ISSUU, which is basically what they call an HTML5. It's a flip book. It's the kind of advertising that you get from people who have catalogs, and you can have virtually as many pages as you want. And I said, well, this is probably a good thing, because if I put all the data that I have into a format like this, and make it available online, people can go look it up. They can use it on their tablet, they can use it on their laptop, they can use it on their desktop or on their phone, excuse me, and we can update it instantly. It's any new information that comes across the desk or whatever, we can update it.
And if I may say, it's searchable.
And searchable.
Because
right.
For somebody like Hamish Ross or Stephen Suchia or the late great Bob Fisher, and all fabulous historians, I'm a little more anecdotal and less book-oriented in terms of the history, but I've read a number of the books. But to be able to go back and search your compendium is an amazing service to the sport. And let me go to the comments, if I may. We got some questions already rolling in here, Mark. But let me do the comments from the bottom up. Clayt Allen Embley down in Kentucky, you have done sailing a great service. Thank you. Gordon Smith, I can foresee a fact off. A fact off between Mark, Ed Magnus, Stephen Hamish. Grab the popcorn, people. It's Yarvahe saying, yeah, what a fantastic resource. Incredible body of work, Mr. President Alistair Murray, past president of Australian Sailing. Blake Middleton, that's a lot of history in one place. Very impressive, Mark. And on and on and on. Yeah, J. Frederick Bland, the Lifetime book collections. Julia, did you ever have the Encyclopedia Britannica growing up?
Yeah, no,
You didn't, boy.
at the library.
We were living out at the lake, so we're away from town. There was a library 6-7 miles away in our little town where our schools were, high school and so on. But my mother, I don't know if my late great mother, speaking of Mother's Day, who was a good sailor, but she, forget about that. She was a good mother. When there were 5 of us, and there was no library any place close. And I don't know, maybe she had a soft spot in her heart for the Encyclopedia Britannica salesperson.
Oh, well, I think
Because she bought, what was it, Mark? 1 volume per month would come and
Something
you'd pay
like that, yeah.
$19.95 or something. And then there
I
was,
don't think anybody ever got up past S.
well, no, we had my mother, bless her heart, we had the whole collection. And as you say, then maybe after you had the whole thing, they'd start to send out an annual, or every other year there'd be some kind of an update. But that is the truth. And I remember my dad coming home and seeing us using it to, now you've got this encyclopedic, you've got this library at your home, and every kid in the neighborhood would come over and use it because to write their papers and so on. Yeah. And long story short, my dad blew a gasket. I mean, he absolutely blew up. How much are you spending on that? What do you mean it's $19.95 a month? And we can't afford that. And it was hilarious, Mark. But your compendium, we don't have to does it cost? How do we get access to it? What does it cost?
Well, there are 16 books, or there will be, when we're all done. What I did, Tom, was for research libraries and places that were able to be of major assistance, and there were a bunch of them, and I'll get to those. The New York Yacht Club Library, the IYRS, International Yacht Restoration School down in Newport, the CRC, down in Mystic, Connecticut. And then certain other people, you mentioned Hamish, you mentioned Steve. They've been provided a copy of them at no cost through something called the MLE, which is the Maritime Library Edition, and it's basically it's the same thing, but there are no restrictions on the use of it and what have you. But that's for people who are. And it's free for them. It's free for any of their library patrons. So if you happen to be around one of them, go see the archivist or the librarian, and they'll be able to get you hooked up. Anybody else? They vary. There are some books that are only 18 pages long, which was the designer's book. And that's like $15. It goes up to a high of for the cups, I think is $70. But and because of your kindness, Tom and Julia and all the Fozy, for the next about a month and a half, 3 books. The one that's called The Cups, which is my favorite. The one that is called Assault, which is something we'll talk about in a little while. And the one that's called The Races are available on www.americascupcompendium.com at no cost to you.
Wow.
Great.
You may have to enter your an email address just as verification, but other than that, there's no cost to you. So
that's
you
fabulous.
anytime you want to use it.
Bravo Zulu. Thank you very much.
Indeed.
That's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Just something that happened earlier. You were talking about Young America. Do you realize that Young America is the only yacht that raced in America's Cup finals that never got their name engraved on the cup?
Indeed.
Only one.
Even though they didn't win,
Right, but the name was always there.
they didn't win because we were representing Stars and Stripes. And we, at the last minute, substituted that boat, the Mermaid, in for our boat, Stars and Stripes. And we should have stuck with Stars and Stripes. That's a whole nother issue. That was a mess. Yeah, and these are the kinds of very cool facts that you've got. You're going to fill us in on some more in a moment. Let's get back to that before or after I ask a couple of these questions that are piling in here. Ted Ryman down in South Africa in Cape Town saying, nice artwork on the covers. John Emmett, wow. Yarvahe, I thought my library was good. But yeah, indeed. Gordon Smith wants to know, Mark, what is that over your right shoulder? Does our guest still have his Christmas tree up, or is he preparing early?
That is.
I asked you that yesterday during the tech check. I said, Mark, what is that over your right shoulder?
That is the Mardi Gras tree. When I was with FEMA down in New Orleans for almost 5 years.
Okay, let me stop you there for a sec. Just to say that, again, you mentioned this, but FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, is our national government funded by the feds, that if there's a disaster like Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans or something, the feds will go in and help support the locals in a recovery effort. FEMA.
Right.
You worked for FEMA for how long?
I worked for FEMA for about 18 years.
Wow.
And either directly or as a what they call a TAC contractor. But down in New Orleans, I'm an architect by training, and I was in charge of what they call the Justice Group, which was every prison and jail and firehouse and police station in Louisiana during that whole thing. So that was kind of a great a great experience for me.
And how'd the Christmas tree end up?
Well,
back in your home in Boston.
Well, we actually decorated with, we took them all down just recently because of the, we just got done with the Mardi Gras, but all the beads and everything else just get hung up on the tree. It's looking a little bare now. We got to get it redecorated. But,
so if you're a designer of prisons, maybe you'd come out here and help President Trump bring Alcatraz Island back up to snuff.
Right. I've toured Alcatraz. That actually is a fascinating facility out there. It's it's
and historic.
Yeah. But I was thinking, you keep talking about moving the Olympics because there's a prison next door. But look at all the housing you'd have.
Yeah, there is a prison right there on Terminal Island, right in the port of L.A. Speaking of which, I just want to say we've got a comment here that came in from Pricey. David Price, is it off? I think it's off the scroll already, but earlier he said, hi from Sydney. This is, of course, Olivia and Harry Price's dad, Christian's husband, David Pricey Price, who was in Long Beach at the Congressional Cup last week. Hi from Sydney, Tom and Julia and the Fozy. We've just returned from Long Beach and took time to drive through San Pedro, which just looks like an industrial area. It has nothing on Long Beach waters. It's a no-brainer in favor of Long Beach for Olympic sailing. And no, I did not ask David or bribe David for that comment. But I think, what do you think? I won't try to color your thinking or judgment, Mark, but Long Beach compared to San Pedro?
It's Olympics, not I'm America's Cup.
Oh, and a diplomat, Julia.
Yes, indeed.
He's a bloody...
I did hear an interesting thing today that Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron has installed a chimney on the top, and there's black smoke coming out now. Once it's finally decided on where the cup is going to be, it turns white.
Well, if only that were true, that they were deciding. Unfortunately, they have delegated their fiduciary responsibility and authority, which is illegal under New York law to do so. Mm-hmm. They've delegated it to the team and the team's managing director, and that's just, if they were making the decision, I'd be a lot happier. Absolutely. Hamish Ross says, what is he trying? There's a good question. Okay, this is, again, from the famous Dr. Hamish Ross, who's got a doctorate in law, and what, Julia, his
America's Cup.
His doctorate, his thesis is the word I was looking for, is on the America's Cup, right? Mm-hmm. Hamish Ross says, what is Mark trying to find what is eluding you. How can the FOSI help
Alluding
you?
or eluding?
Eluding,
Well,
I think he meant. What, Mark, can we do, the FOSI do, Hamish, besides just, I'm sure you're already in touch. Well, obviously you are with Hamish and Stephen Suchia and so on. What can we do to help fill in some of the gaps?
Well, okay, there are a couple of interesting things, and each one takes a little short, tiny story. When the exposition back in 1850 was being developed by Prince Albert and Queen Victoria, there was a lot of problem in getting reaction from the United States, from the colony, to try to get them to send stuff. So there have been reports that go all the way back to the Lawson book, which is basically was the original, I guess, version of Compendium. But in Lawson and everything, they allude to letters that came from businessmen in England to businessmen in the United States, and trying to get some interest. Now, the New York Yacht Club was developed, and formulated over the years. It wasn't directly downtown, but there were other clubs in that area, and one of them, according to a very lengthy article that was written about 2 weeks after the completion of the August 22nd race, alluded to, or particularly said that the interest was coming from the Union Yacht Club in New York.
Union Yacht Club, yeah.
The Union Yacht Club. Now, in doing all kinds of research, we find that there is no Union Yacht Club. There wasn't. There wasn't until probably around 1910 or thereabouts. But there is a Union Club.
Yeah, the Union Club is very, and I'll tell you, we have a FOSI who's a member, I believe. I think Claire Harrington is either a member or is closely connected therewith as the Vice Commodore of New York. So I don't think she's watching today because she told me she had important meetings. This is commissioning weekend at Harbor Court in Newport.
Oh, yeah.
So they're very busy there with board meetings and executive and gosh knows what else. But let's talk to Claire. Hamish Ross probably has the history of that as well. And have you seen this book? Have you got a copy of Magnus's book?
Yep, I've got a copy right here. Yep.
Okay, because he has a lot of that you referred to us as a colony in 1851. We were
Yeah.
the colonies as the Brits were probably still thinking of us.
But what I'm finding, Tom, is that and this is minutia, so it's not, it's nothing that is devastating. But out of the 5 members of the original America's Cup of the America's Syndicate, there were 4 that were involved in the New York Yacht Club, but there was one, J. Beekman Finley, was not. He was a businessman. He had no interest whatsoever in sailing. And he was a member of the Union Club. We've determined that. So were 4 out of the 5 other members of the original syndicate, members of the Union Club.
Maybe the Union Yacht Club was connected somehow to that.
Well,
or was even the predecessor of that club.
Yeah. So what we may find is that the Union Yacht Club was a Scribner error, and it was just the Union Club. And then later on, late in the article, it was talking about, after they sailed for France, they actually said this was New York Yacht Club that was running it. So either it was a major Scribner error, which I doubt, or it was that the original conversations were going on between somebody in England and somebody at the Union Club, which is the business club.
Not at the New York Yacht Club.
Not at the Yacht Club.
Interesting.
And then it trickled down from there. So what I'm trying to find is to answer to Hamish, and this is the kind of thing we love to talk about, is that there is a there's got to be letters somewhere, buried somewhere, was that impetus for Stevens and others at the beginning.
Mm.
So
Julia's got a question.
No, I
Yes, sir.
don't.
Oh, she doesn't. Okay. She was clearing her throat.
Clearing my mind. Yeah.
there are several others. One of them was on America. When they finally got to the point where they had turned down the first race because there wasn't enough wind, and then they kind of joined in and ended up as kind of dragging along with it and almost winning it. But in the actual race for on Coes on the 22nd, the reports are that they borrowed, and that's what they called 13 crewmen from a British yacht called Surprise. And
this is the yacht America in
this is during,
1851?
during the America's Cup race.
Because we all know they had a navigator. They had a British navigator on the boat, pilot rather.
Yep.
But for modern parlance, a navigator in effect.
Right, but there were actually 13, supposedly, according to the 2 or 3 sources we found, 13 of these Brits who were on there who actually sailed America around the course. Mm-hmm. Now, the reason this is interesting is that when they got to, I guess it was down by Needles, the barge that was carrying the Queen and her entourage came within hailing distance, I guess. And the Queen noted a number of times in her memoirs that the crew doffed their hats and bowed deeply, and they lowered the
ensign,
the flag. Now, if they were in fact Brits, then that would maybe be the reason why all the pomp and circumstance. Or if it was just a weird thing. But the thing that bothers me is that with a crew of 23 or 24 people, if 13 of them were borrowed, I would think that we'd like to be able to find their names somewhere and add them to the list of history.
Interesting.
And
well, you think the Americans were too uncouth to otherwise know the proper royal protocol?
I think they were too busy, beating the wind. Right?
Okay. We got so many questions and comments. Let me just jump in here. Lex Smith is a new name in the chat. Welcome, Lex, wherever in the world you are. Tell us where you are, what you sail if you're a sailor, and if not, welcome regardless. Steve Gruber is back on the 95 Stars and Stripes. You'll remember, Mark, that keel during the Defender trials, our keel literally was falling off at one point. We had a massive protest that I had to defend, and we got pinged, not very much, but we did get pinged a little bit. But the scarier thing was when the keel started to fall off and the boat was taking on water up through the bottom of the boat during one of these Defender trials in 95. Yeah. We all hopped off the chase boat that we were on to help with the bucket brigade because we're bailing the boat until we could get the pumps come in from the tender. We were literally bailing the boat with a bucket brigade. And I'm below in foul weather gear in boots that haven't been taped, and we're handing buckets up to, bailing the boat out of water so it literally won't sink. So this is Stars and Stripes 95. And I'm sitting there thinking, I've just got, I've got a 2.5-year-old, 3-year-old daughter. What am I doing down here? This boat could sink right now and it'd take us all with it.
Yeah.
That'll be in my book when I write it, Mark, and then you can excerpt some stuff for the compendium from there. But I suspect Hamish Ross knows a lot about this, as does Magnus and maybe others, Steve Suchia. So we'll see if they can add to it. Let me just say, if I can just check in with a couple of these other questions. You can make a country out of a colony, but you can't take the colony out of the country. Thanks, Gordon Smith, the Brit. Mm-hmm. Pedro foiling sailors. So the Americans cheated having Englishmen on board during the first race. No, there was no nationality rule, Mark, or Pedro, Peter Stevenson. And there was for sure, by all reports from that time, there was a British pilot helping to navigate the boat around the Isle of Wight.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you want to talk about this section, the deed of gift in particular? Was there anything? I've gone through a couple times showing all the different what books, I guess you call them, the books.
Right.
How about the deed of gift?
The deed is fascinating because we take and very carefully took the exact text from the original that was written, and of course, without getting into the whole story in the deed, because that can take a tremendous amount of time, but the deed was written quite a bit after the cup was presented to the New York Yacht Club. Back in October, I think it was October 2nd of 1851, when they got back from England, they had the syndicate had the trophy with them, and they were given a grand banquet at the Astor House, and they had the cup there, and they thanked everybody who supported them, and just a big celebration. At the end, the way we look at it is at the end of the celebration, the secretary for the New York Yacht Club, having been presented this cup, put it in a carry satchel, a carpet bag they called it, and took it home and put it on the shelf, because the one thing that was missing was the transfer, the deed of gift, which was required for the New York Yacht Club to start issuing it then as a
challenge
prize.
Trophy, yeah,
as a challenge trophy. So it sat there, and for a while, for a number of years, up until 1857, the things changed in the lives of the original 5 people.
Well, most of them died.
Yeah, most of them died, exactly. And so they actually they finally got around to writing the deed, but for some reason it was never signed, and it sat around. They finally said, "What do you want? What do you want us to do with this thing?" They said, "Well, let's find it." They found a copy of it. They found a draft, and they submitted that to the New York Yacht Club, and New York Yacht Club accepted it. Now, there's a lot more nuances and things with it, and you can read about it all completely in the book, or in mine, or in Steve Tashier's excellent book on the.
Yeah, Hamish Ross is a student of the deed and knows as much or more about it as anybody, I think. And
right.
I'm sure there's going to be a lot of consultation and collaboration between the two of you and Steve Suchia and probably Magnus the Magnificent. But I think Claire Harrington is a source. I'm also seeing in the chat, Mark, that Alex Hayworth, who is a Brit, who's got some real inside scoop on the current, on the contemporary cup and what's going on with the British teams and the Royal Yacht Squadron and so on. He's saying 2 Royal Naval staff were recommended to the America by the institutions in Portsmouth. The naval institutions, I assume you mean. So maybe Alex has got a handle on there as well. I think the FOSI can be a great resource for you and vice versa going forward.
I agree.
Mark, Julia, did you have a question?
Well, Hamish Ross said that he knew that the Surprise was owned by an American heiress.
Oh, it was the Yacht Surprise.
Mm-hmm.
What a surprise! Okay, how about the races themselves? You've got a chart here for us.
Yeah,
a couple of spreadsheets that are interesting.
Yeah, that's book 7. We went through everything from the New York Times, who was incredibly good in the old days about reporting America's Cup and just racing yacht activity in general. And in the races in book 7, where we've got, it's like 360 pages long, there were 3,397 races. Now, those aren't all America Cup races. Those are ones leading up to it. And over the years, there were different types of qualification races. There were what they call observation races. There were the elimination races, all kinds of different things. But if it was in a cup year, and it was now this one you're seeing here is for 24. This was which was Barcelona. But these are so what it does is it shows you the date, what the wind limits were, the time originally that the race was supposed to go off, the wind information, the course, the length of the course. Length of course is one of those weird things, as you know from our coverage from Barcelona. The races kept changing lengths.
Do you have this level of detail back? How far? I mean, how far back?
All the way.
All the way. That's incredible.
All the way back to 1870.
Let me. Here's another page.
That's right. That's kind of some of these things are more recent things where we got reporting on distance sailed and top speed and VMG and maneuvers and that type of thing.
What is this page? What do you remember?
This is actually, if this is direct, as you open Compendium on your screen, you'll actually have this directly next to it, so it reads all the way across.
But do you know what series, what matches, what events? Because it doesn't say otherwise on the slide.
This was America's Cup. This is the same one that we had on the previous slide. So it's from
2024. I see. So this is This is an extension of that slide.
Yeah.
Okay,
Exactly.
Amazing stuff. And Jack Griffin, tell us about Jack Griffin's involvement, because I've known Jack for years and years. As has Hamish.
Jack was funny. I was talking to some people, and they said, there's a guy in Europe who's also writing a book on America's Cup. So I talked to a couple of people, and we got together, and it turned out that Jack and I hit it off. And he has an incredibly big library of America's Cup stuff, everything similar to mine, but with all that he had and all that I had, we didn't duplicate a whole lot. So we were able to, through file trading and what have you, be able to share an awful lot of information. He at the time was in the process with another young lady from Germany who was a silver specialist, expert, to write a book on the cup itself, but as it turned out, I think I had a little bit of a head start on what he was doing, and so mine came out. His will be out probably next year. But to get to the point where we were able to deal with it and be able to present it, I was able to, through a lot of negotiations between him and Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron and some of the older people who have now left there, in April of 23, I was able to make a trip over to Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron, and in a 1 day kind of high pressure situation, I actually removed America's Cup from its case, and we put it on a turntable, and I took 260 detailed photographs of it.
Wow!
And it was one of those things where amid high security and a lot of worry and what have you, I was able to I think document it pretty well. And then from there, as you see, we, in that picture that's on the extreme right-hand side of the screen, from the photographs, I was able to, the one on the right is a photograph, and the other is a drawing of it, which actually goes into the detail, Tom, of what each one of those little filigrees and appliques and what have you is, and what it how
amazing.
Yeah, incredible.
And this goes into there are pages and pages and pages of this, and every one of the items on there, The funny thing about America's Cup itself is it has absolutely zero nautical, theming to it. There are monsters on it. There are women on it with pearls. There are, it's an interesting mishmash of things, but
including, if I may, all the engraving that is there, and some of it that was removed.
Right, exactly, and what we find is that as you know, the America's Cup as it sits now is three parts. It's the original cup from 1848, which is one of six. Two of them are believed to have been melted down. One of them is America's Cup.
Okay, now I'm not going to go over, but you see the painting here, which is accurate, and I need a long stick, Julie, but you can see the first part that just goes down to about where the top of the clock is. It's on right on top of my monitor. That's the original trophy, as most people know. Then there is the first base,
plinth,
which was the 1958 base.
Yep.
And then there's the second base, which was from
2001.
Right. And then there's the carbon base at the bottom, which we Golden Gate put on just to make it tidy. And what else is coming onto the cup now?
Well, what happened is that second base, the lower, what we call the second plinth, was returned to Garrod in England. And the reason was that the lettering had just gotten out of hand. You have to realize that, and we go through this in deep detail in the book, but the number of characters and the number of races, starting with the number of races, in the early days, there were no preliminary races. There was maybe 2 or 3 or maybe 4 America Cup races. And so it didn't take up a whole lot of space.
They were first to win 2.
Yeah.
And then it was first to win 3 in the early part of the 20th century. And then gradually got longer, and mostly for television purpose, first to win 4, that was for a long time in the 12-meter era. And then finally first to win 5, and now what is it? It's first to win 9. Bloody hell!
Right, exactly. Now, if you go to the one, that slide you had up, Tom, with the text on it, I think it was the 2013. There were look at all the races. There were actually 800 characters there that had to be engraved in the. You're
talking about this section from the 2013.
Yeah. And so what happened is that well,
that's because it went to 17 races, right?
Right, exactly. And it used up and when these are laid out on in Compendium, this is exactly how they're laid out. So they wrap around the cup, and they're in various places, and there are charts in there that show where these were located. But as you see, these were removed. They were ground out and reduced significantly
tell us by whom?
By Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron,
which is it's a disaster. I mean, they're erasing history. It's like the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron is embarrassed of having won. There were 19. Yeah, Alex Hayworth is right. There were 2 other races because we were penalized to had to win 2 more. But I mean, it's incredible that was erased. If they want to add a base or something, but to go back and erase some of the engraving, it's blasphemy. It's blasphemy. If the Pope were here, he would not be amused, Mark.
Yeah, I agree. I think the decision kind of came because of what they call the Stanley Cup syndrome. Stanley Cup, has been around just for a little bit less time, but they used to, or they still do, engrave the name of every player who was in the
hang on. The Stanley Cup is for the National Hockey League here in North America, Canada, and the U.S. It's just in fact, I was watching the game last night between Las Vegas and Edmonton, the hockey player and referee that I was. And it was an overtime game, fabulous. And they were referring to the Stanley Cup repeatedly on ESPN. as the most difficult trophy to win.
No.
Well, exactly. I mean,
This one is-
that also is blasphemy. I mean, obviously, the America's Cup is more difficult, more expensive, but it was a fabulous game, and they did several times refer to it as the most difficult trophy to win. The Stanley Cup, emblematic of the championship of the National Hockey League, which is really the Canadian American Hockey League now here, and has been since the latter part of the 1800s, maybe the early part of the 1900s. Heresy.
But the Stanley Cup has tiers in it, has sections, and they only leave the last 5 sections.
Yeah, it's a layer cake, and we've talked about that on the show before. And because not only the players on the winning team, but also the officials, the trainers. I mean, anybody that's connected closely in with the team on the staff is engraved on the Stanley Cup. So that engraving of each of those rings, as they're called. And then after the one fills up, they remove the top one, the oldest one, right?
And it's on display up in Canada.
Well, it's at the National Hockey Hall of Fame in Toronto. Right.
But that's what they were afraid of with the America's Cup, because if they had to add another base, the last base was about 7.5 inches high. But the case right now, and one of the things that, again, that graphic shows that we had in there, is that for every Louis Vuitton case or Prada case that has been built, there's a drawing in there showing how the cup fits in it and what have you. There you see it right there in the center. That happens to be the 2017 one. But the problem is that one right there is already 4.5 feet tall, almost 4 3/4 feet tall. And the protocol for moving America's Cup is that it can never be loaded as freight.
That's correct.
It must be carried, with humans, with people. So the size that they have is the only thing that would fit in
an airplane seat.
747 was the base, but now 380 I guess is what they do. But there are lockers in the first class compartment.
It never went in the locker. It wouldn't fit. I carried that trophy around the world and flew with it, and on big planes and small. And you bought a seat for it and strapped it in.
Right. And the cost of shipping that in a first class seat, we actually saw an invoice for it, fairly recently, and it is extraordinary.
Well, it's the cost of a first class seat. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is that we have, getting back to those bases, the bottom base had all kinds of different styles and what have you, different shapes, and it wasn't really organized very well. So one of the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron executives put it in his luggage, but just the bottom section, brought it back to England to be, well, the idea was to melt it down. And we can get into the whole thing that Hamish wrote on and knows about extensively, which was what was called Silvergate. But because of the fears of another Silvergate type of thing happening, the question was, do we actually melt this down and make another one just like it? And when they brought it to Garage, they said, they walk in and they said, we're not going to do it. I don't care if we have a contract or not. We're not going to melt it down.
Are you talking after it was vandalized in New Zealand?
Right. This was in 2000.
Okay, let's go look at. First of all, tell us about these pictures. Then we'll go to the vandalized pictures. What is this stuff from SNG, Société Nautique Genève?
From FNG.
What are these?
Oh. That's actually a travel case that was designed for America's Cup, and it's made. It's carbon fiber. It was made in Croatia by a company that makes cases for violas and violins and just really, really, really expensive musical instruments.
Oh, really?
And it actually has these pressure point spring sensors inside that hold everything snug. But that's I just got such a kick out of that. But
I've never heard of these. I've never seen them. I didn't know they were. This is SNG, which is a Lingies club in Geneva.
right.
They had these made.
It was used for about a year, and
I'll be damned.
and then there's another one that is a sailcloth one that was made by North Sails that is very, very compact, and it's just kind of a thin plywood case with a foam rubber insert in it, but it has a sailcloth outside and handles on it and what have you. But it was actually happening. It was used more for transport when again during COVID, when the planes that airlines were using, they were tending towards smaller planes.
Well, yeah,
And
I can tell you. I can tell you about that. I took the Cup to Hamilton Island down in Australia to Hamilton Island Race Week, and Ian Murray and Jimmy Spithill and I were giving talks and so on. To get the Cup to Sydney from wherever, I guess it came from San Francisco, I can't remember, with the Cup, that's no problem because you're in a first class seat. The Louis Vuitton box goes in a seat, you strap it in with extra straps, and it's fine. But when you try to fly from Sydney up to Hamilton Island, you're on a little plane. And we could not get the Louis Vuitton Cup box,
Any place.
the box, into the plane. We could get in the plane, but it would not fit in the seat, not in a bulkhead seat. Not sometimes you could sit it between the seat. I would sometimes put the Cup box between the seat and the bulkhead, even if not in first class. Sometimes you had more space in the back of the bus. But we couldn't fit it in anywhere, so you had to take, in that case, you had to take the Cup out of the box. You wrapped it in a blanket. You wrapped it in a blanket, you put it in the seat next to you, and you strapped it in with seat belts, and you always had a couple extra belts and so on with you. And everybody, now the problem with that is security, because now everybody on the plane knows that there's something up, and you're the first on and last off, so everybody walks past it.
Right.
And you're not going to hold up the crowd while you're mucking around with the Cup. So, yeah, no, I've been there. Alistair Murray was at that talk at Hamilton. It was good fun. Hey, let's push on because we're an hour and 17 minutes into this. You've also documented some of the other trophies, including the Pell Cup that most people wouldn't have heard of, which was Ida Lewis Yacht Club donated for the Challenger Selection Series.
Right. They give it to the basically the first runner up for the selection series. And the interesting thing, Pell was a senator from Rhode Island, and but he had relatives in England. And many years before, this cup was actually a tennis trophy.
Yep.
that was given to his uncle. And they never engraved it or anything. And they said, well, okay, in '58, let's donate it and what have you. So and I tell you, the people at Ida Lewis are the greatest group and supportive group in sailing. But
Ida Lewis Yacht Club, which they have their commissioning tomorrow also. Harbor Court's being commissioned. Ida Lewis Yacht Club out there at the end of the spit. And some of our Aussie friends will remember what Alan Bond's wife, Eileen, called Ida Lewis Yacht Club, because Ida Lewis used to host the Challenger races and the race committee and so on. And she called the Ida Lewis Yacht Club a terrible thing one time publicly. I won't say it here. But Ida Lewis Yacht Club is a fabulous club. Their commissioning's tomorrow, and I think Magnus the Magnificent and Claire and a few others are going to go out there.
Going to be there.
When I go to Newport for Harbor Court's commissioning, I always go out to Ida Lewis because it is a fabulous club with a great, as you can see from this trophy, a great America's Cup pedigree as well. And of course, it was the New York Yacht Club station in Newport up until 1988, when New York Yacht Club bought Harbor Court from the Brown family and then had their own clubhouse there in Newport.
Exactly.
Now, Claiborne Pell, who gave this trophy, Senator Pell, his first name was Claiborne. You, for extra credit, do either of you know what his nickname was in Rhode Island politics and around the waterfront in Newport?
No, I don't know.
It was Stillborn. He was called not Claiborne Pell. He was called Stillborn Pell because, especially as he got old and doddery. I mean, he was one of these typical, as we have too many of them in our government now, our Senate and beyond.
But
Stillborn Pell.
on that particular cup is interesting because
You got to put that in the compendium, Mark. Stillborn Pell.
I'll certainly add that. But that Pell Cup is interesting because that also has a deed of gift to it.
Yep.
It's a deed of loan actually, and the winner has it for about a month less than the next award ceremony, and then it's return. It has to be returned to Ida Lewis, but in return, Ida Lewis provides a cup, an actual like a chalice that is similarly engraved, but that's what they call a keeper cup.
Keeper
and
trophy,
that's returned to the people. So the people actually, they have the big cup or the bowl for a while, and then they return it.
Okay, now for extra credit, do you know what other yacht club in the world presents a trophy to the winners and runners-up of the Challenger Selection Series? There's another club. We're going to test Mark and his compendium here.
Boy.
Uh,
I thought I had enough
Hamish and
information.
Ross, if he hasn't gone, well, it's Saturday down under. He's not going to be working. Yeah, there's another club that gives a trophy that is also, it's kind of a, see, what happens, you get the Challenger Selection Series, and if it's sponsored by Louis Vuitton, or for the years it was sponsored by Prada, the one go-around, one cycle, they don't want any part of the Ida Lewis trophy. They don't want any part of this other club's trophy because they want to have all the publicity for awarding the Louis Vuitton Cup. And you always had to kind of run a luncheon someplace kind of off campus and low key. And then the representatives of those clubs would come. And there's Hamish Ross has put it in the chat. I knew he would know. The Royal Ulster Yacht Club years ago donated a trophy that is also awarded. So what happens, of course, Mark and Julia, is that those clubs, whoever their latest Commodore and Major Domos are, they all end up having an excuse to go to the America's Cup and present these trophies. So on and on. Let's push on here to the attack on the cup, because go ahead and wrap that up, but let's talk then about the attack.
I do want to mention one thing. When we were talking about that lower, that second plinth, when it got back to
the very bottom of the cup over here,
right, the one just above the black base,
right.
The idea was to melt it down and make a duplicate of it. And the people at Garrard absolutely refused, even though they had a contract to do it, they absolutely refused. So Royal New Zealand took it back with them back to Auckland, and Garrard made a new base that was identical to it, sterling silver, the whole 9 yards. They Garrard re-engraved all of the information on it in a smaller font size that replicated what was on the 1958 base. But they added a couple of things. They added a very large, down in the base of it, the word Garrard, which was not authorized, and then they had made another error in when they called they engraved Ilingi instead of Ilingi 5. So basically, Royal New Zealand was ticked off. I mean, really ticked off at Garrard. So they sent it back to them. They said, wipe out the Garrard name. This is not an advertising piece for you, and fix the Ilingi thing, and then ship it back to us. So they got it.
And you've documented all of this in the compendium.
Yeah.
You've got the letters and back and forth. Tell us about the attack.
Okay, attack on the cup.
This is a whole book, right? One of the book
it's an entire book. Yeah,
in the compendium.
It's when I went. I got so involved in America's Cup, the cup itself, and I'll always call it, one thing is, I will always call it America's Cup. I do not call it the America's Cup. That's just an English thing, and it just makes me nuts.
Okay, but hang on. Do you know what the original name was? Have you talked to Dyer Jones in Newport?
Well, it was 100.
Well, a 100-pound cup, but forgetting about that, once it became popular in after the deed and leading up to the 1870 and 71 matches, it was originally not even called America's Cup.
They called it the old mug, but that was
just a term of endearment later on.
Right, and that's not right because it's the old mug is actually a trophy for Indian rugby, I think it is. And
Well, I'm sure there's lots of
yeah,
old mugs having to do with Scotland and so on. But no, seriously, there is a trophy. There was the America's Cup, is what has become popularly known. That came out of the press. It was
yeah,
originally called the America Cup without the apostrophe S.
right.
America Cup, and Dyer Jones and a few other the New York Yacht Club stalwarts to this day call it the America Cup, not the America's Cup.
Yeah, and that's
America apostrophe S Cup.
Yeah,
and not the
But that's
100 Guinea Cup, which is what was engraved on it, because the Brits, when they donated, as you all know, as the 100-pound cup, is what they called it.
right.
But indeed, engraved on it up here, even in the painting, you could see it if I zoomed camera 2 in on it, but I won't. It says the 100 Guineas Cup. And of course, the guinea is a 1 pound, 1 shilling.
Right.
So
right.
it was not
And it's only used now for buying horses.
exactly.
But
back to the attack.
Right, on attack. So I really fell in love with this piece of silverware to the point where, you know, I had went as far as I could in learning about what happened. And on March 14th, 1997, a Maori who would be basically a tribesman, a present day tribesman in New Zealand, visited the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron, dressed in a suit and tie and carrying a little blue satchel, saying he was a reporter from a local newspaper, a weekly newspaper. And he said, "Can I see the cup?" And they said, "Certainly, sure, go ahead." And so he went upstairs to the top of the stairs and into what was called the members' lounge at that time. And there were 4 people in the room. There were 2 sailors who were there for a weigh-in for a regatta, and then there were 2 staff members, a woman and a man. And the guy put down the bag and took out a 20-pound sledgehammer. And he started to beat on the case. You see on the one photo on the left-hand side, not where the cup is, but the next panel over, there's a starred area. He hit that area about 10 times, and then he couldn't break through, so he tried the other side and hit it another 15 times. And at that point, he reached in, cut his hand, and pulled the trophy out, and then hit again with, you can imagine it was a fairly short handle, maybe 16-inch long 20-pound sledgehammer, and he started to beat the America's Cup trophy. And he just wailed on it, and he was chanting in Maori. The woman, of course, there's glass flying everywhere. He stopped for a moment. He ripped off his coat, his tie. He pulled his shirt open, popped all the buttons off, and he's wearing a T-shirt that had the logo of a kind of an uprising type local rural organization.
No, he was a terror. You'd call it a terrorist. He was certain people would call him an activist. Certain people would call him a terrorist. He's a crouton. He was complete. Yeah. Now, do you know? And he was there to make a point about some political cause, right? And he got tried and he got thrown in the clink for a while and then released.
Yeah, he was caught immediately, and of course, he just knelt down and. Do
you remember who caught him?
There were 2 workmen that were working downstairs, and there happened to be a photographer who was testing. He had nothing to do with the thing, but he was testing a lens.
Do you know who else was there?
So, took some photographs.
Famously good sailor, several-time principal race officer for the America's Cup, and Hamish Ross has now put it in the comments. Harold Bennett.
Yep, Harold Bennett, exactly.
Harold was there and tackled him, apparently, along with the other people.
Harold actually went down, according to the record. He went down to call the police and then come back up. But there was there was a woman there who was a a clerk, an older woman, and she basically hid behind a copy machine to save her life. And so when I was in Auckland after I took the pictures, I met with people from the Auckland Police Department who were just incredibly wonderful people, and the presiding judge of the district court that tried him. And through him and through his extremely able clerk, we were able to get the transcript of the trial.
Oh, really?
And now
Is that in the compendium?
It's already in there. And it's there for the reading. It's incredibly fascinating because it goes through what happened, which is the factual part of it, but it also goes through a day and a half of testimony from Benjamin himself.
What was his name? Benjamin Nathan or Nathan?
Benjamin Nathan. Yeah.
Benjamin Nathan.
But he changed his name like 5 times and what have you. So, but he had a trial. The trial lasted about 3.5 days. He was convicted in 1 hour. And no question about that. The judge was really fair, and when in September 7th, when he was finally sentenced, the judge sentenced him to 2 years and 10 months. Now the problem was that this guy was a bad guy anyway, and he had tried 2 years earlier to rob a bank in Auckland. And he just wasn't successful and what have you. He finally, a couple of days later, turned himself in. He was given he was given a 24-month sentence for that action. But they decided to put him on probation. Typical. So he lasted 4 months on probation and defaulted, and then they hadn't heard from him. They couldn't find him anything for a year. Then he did the attack on the cop. He's arrested, so they held him. So he went back under security and very quietly, because they didn't want to affect the outcome of this case or prejudice this case. But the judge said, as soon as this other case, you're going to stay in custody, and as soon as this other case is over, you're going to do 18 months without adjustment, regardless of what their sentence is. So they locked him up. A couple of months later, they started the trial. He was given the 2 years, 10 months. He was in jail for a while. He's still, but these were okay. But bottom line was that the cup was absolutely nearly destroyed. They brought it to England to be rebuilt. A great guy named Rod Hingston put it all back together again. He came back. They put it in a brand new high security case, and where it is now, and very hard to get to. And,
the club security increased by an order of magnitude, and the thing disappears down at night into a very strong case. And it also, exactly, if somebody even at reception comes in and looks crutonic, somebody at reception can push a button and the cup basically disappears into that plinth. Hamish Ross is saying in the comments, nothing but a plain villain and criminal. Yeah, but, well, a cretinous, Yarvahe is saying, a cretinous act. Nice to see those idiots convicted today for cutting down the sycamore at the Sycamore Gap. So sad, Alan Long is saying. Mark, let's wrap this up. The Compendium is an amazing piece of work, thanks to you and to Jack Griffin and others. It's available, I gather, at americascupcompendium.com, and Fozy can request of you. How do they get through to you to make a request to get the 3 free volumes that you've offered on today's show?
There is the free volumes, you just go right into it. You click on the one you want to read, and it will come right up.
Oh, you can get them at compendium.com.
Yeah, it's not, but they are online. You read them online. They are not downloadable because to do that we would lose all those great links. But you can click on any of the hyperlinks that are in there, and it brings you to articles and all kinds of stuff.
Great stuff. Well, this is going to be a work in progress, I gather.
Yeah.
And it's just, as Ed Worley is saying, who's a bit of a cup historian and aficionado himself, an expert. We're going to do his segment next, his America's Cup trivia section, segment. But Mark, thanks for doing all of this work on the AC history, Ed Worley, and I'm sure everybody on here in the chat would echo the same. Julia?
Absolutely. It's a great gift to people who, whether they know it or not.
The next 2 volumes to come out, when will they come? You said there were 2 others you're still working on?
The late this fall, we're going to have the one that's called The Press. But there's a preview of that in volume 1, the guide. The second section is a teaser. It's about 100 pages long. But you can go through and find there are going to be somewhere in the vicinity of over 10,000 articles that were written either in the New York Times or Boston Globe or Bell's Life, and all the way back to 1850.
Wow.
And you can click on them, and the article pops right up. You sometimes need a subscription with with those newspapers to do that, but it's economical. So if
you're retired, you're not trying to become a billionaire doing this. This must be a major job. I mean, just the cost of putting this up and carrying. It's like our show, just putting. In fact, this new Zoom thing, I hope you have agreed that it's worked as well. This is the first time we've tried our new Zoom with special Zoom ISO software. It's working good at our end if it is for you.
Yeah.
But it costs money. You got to pay a few bucks a month, and that's why we all have contributors, including you, for the Compendium.
Yeah. Compendium, they went up by 600% last year, and it's extreme. This year we'll suffer through. Next year, I don't know. We'll see what happens, but we may have to go to.
You mean the cost of hosting it online went up 600? Yeah. Fantastic stuff. Now we know why you know so much, and we're such a great contributor to our America's Cup watch parties back when we did. Remember, we did 31 of those. It's hard to believe that we've done 832 shows, and we did 31 watch parties. Earlier this year, Julia.
Yes.
I guess it was late last year.
I still wake up at 4 o'clock every morning.
Well, you got other problems. You just don't sleep. Stingray has an original print of the New York Times from 1852, dated September the 3rd, 1852. Final question, Mark, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, can they just go to compendium.com, and is there contact information or
AC compendium@gmail.com.
Okay, I'll put that address into the next show because I have that from communicating with you, Mark, here in the last few days. In fact, somebody put it in the chat for us. Say it again. It's
ac.compendium@gmail.com.
ac.compendium.
Right.
@gmail.com, and that's how they can get a hold of you. Great stuff. Can you hang with us while we do the next segment, which is going to be Cup
I don't
related?
leave your show, Tom. Tom, I haven't missed a show since the first one. I think one was when I was at sea crossing the Atlantic. But other than that, I've never missed a show.
Well, you're not only a fantastic, loyal superfozy by now, but as Ryman says, you're an outstanding guest. Alistair Murray said, man, one of the best guests you've had in a long time, if not ever. And go back, as Julia likes to remind us, go back and read the comments because they're fantastic.
Thank you all so much. I do it for you. I do it for the love of the cup.
Yar Vahes typed it in. Steve Gruber's typed it in. ac.compendium@gmail.com. Much appreciated. Okay, perfect. Let's hang with us, and we'll carry on here for our next segment. That if you just are joining us, late, that's our author and America's Cup expert by now, Mark Holland, a retired FEMA architect living outside of Boston and a boyhood America's Cup fan. And this is an amazing piece of work that he's done. And he can probably answer this question, which is our latest from Ed Worley. Ed Worley's America's Cup History Challenge from Ed, submitted some weeks ago. We've worked on it a little bit, and this one is called Up in Smoke. Throughout the long history of the America's Cup, the fate and future use of yachts that both defended and challenged has been debated. 12-meter and J-class yachts not only survived after being dropped from use in the Cup, but they've thrived. Those classes have thrived, continuing to be restored and raced across the globe in many cases, but not all. Which leads to today's trivia question. After the Cup, which innovative yacht was removed from boatyard storage by the owner's order, break her up, and burn her in the fireplace? I never want to see that boat again.
Aha.
Multiple guess. Was it the 1886 Defender Mayflower? Was it the 1887 Challenger Thistle? Was it the 1895 Challenger Valkyrie 3? Or was it the 1920 Challenger Shamrock 4? Which of those four boats was, at the owner's order, burnt in the fireplace as fire kindling after losing the match, or after, well, all four of those? The Defender Mayflower didn't actually, yeah, she sailed and won the match. 1920, Groover says Shamrock in 1920, the Shamrock 4. Yarvahe says the same. Groover says the same. Ted Ryman thinks it's Thistle. Pedro Foiling Sailor thinks it's 1920. Let's go to our esteemed guest and ask Mark Holland, do you know which of those four, Mark?
I know my answer would have been, every boat owner, but
Alistair Murray has no idea. Phil Yeoman says Shamrock. Fritz Mueller says Valkyrie 3. Julia?
I looked at Shamrock and said, I think that was it, but I have no idea.
Okay, so here's the answer. And your first clue. Does that up came the text? I was just going to show the boat, but the text also came up. Shamrock 4. So most of you were right. Designed by Charles E. Nicholson. In the 1920 America's Cup match, Shamrock 4 was the fourth Lipton Challenger. After winning 2 races, she was defeated 3 straight. She was on the cusp of winning the match to be the first ever challenger to win. She was defeated 3 straight by Resolute, the American defender for New York Yacht Club, who then won the Cup in that best-of-5 series 3-2. So does that add up to you?
makes sense.
That's what it was. And she was burnt by Lipton in a fireplace. Lipton's 4th loss after being up 2-0. I mean, what a bitter pill to swallow, as Ed Worley is saying. In 1923, Lipton ordered Shamrock 4 destroyed. Her bronze bottom was scrapped, and the hull was sawed into fireplace logs that lasted through 1931.
That's good to know.
Huh?
Too. That's good to know.
1931.
Mm-hmm.
Ed Worley's AC History Challenge. Much appreciated, Ed. Thank you very much. And we'll have another one, I'm sure, from Ed sooner than later. We're an hour and 43 minutes into this show. We do this every Tuesday and Friday, as most of you know. And thanks to Ed Worley. And now thanks to another one of our regular contributors who, along with John Emmett, have been at this for a long time. And this is a famously cool former president of a national governing body of a member national authority. This is, of course, Alistair Murray. Mm-hmm. And Alistair's regular submission called AAAA, and has nothing to do with Alcoholics Anonymous. It's Alistair's awesome Aussie anecdote. Mm-hmm. And here it is.
G'day, Tom, Julia, and all the Fozy. This is Alistair with AAAA. I just want to tell you a little bit about what I think sailing should be all about, or there should be more of it anyway. We've recently done our Easter regatta at Meetung Yacht Club, and it's a regatta with a difference. It's with the emphasis on fun. It's families, kids. You can sail whatever classes you want. We sail from Opties right through to Old Flying Dutchman. The cruise can be from young kids, and there's many young kids participate, to old guys like me, and I've really enjoyed sailing it. And even people take their dogs along. And I'll send you some photos to go with this very brief report. But not only dogs, but if you look at some of the photos, you might find the Easter Bunny out on a boat throwing chocolate eggs at the kids in the boats, and even the older kids like me. So the racing format is we had one day, we've done this every year for as many years as I can remember. In fact, the tradition goes back 60 years that the Meetung Yacht Club has been inviting Sandringham Yacht Club to come and join them as their guests. So the first day is 4 traditional races, triangle win or return regular races. The second day is a long passage race between islands, all the way to the length of the lake and return. And the return race starts with a Le Mans running start from the beach, which is a bit of a handicap for the old guys like me. The kids beat us at that bit. And then the third day is a passage race again from one lake into the next lake in the Gippsland Lakes complex. And that's a wonderful day. And then we race back again. And this particular regatta, we saw the biggest pot of dolphins that we've ever seen on the Gippsland Lakes. As I said, dogs, kids, adults, Easter bunnies, all classes. We have parties. We have parties each evening, including a fabulous dinner at our local fire station. It's a volunteer fire station, and we make that a fundraiser. So all in all, it's the emphasis on fun, and it's the reason that my wife and I actually fell in love with Meetung. It's the reason we end up buying a house there. It's amazing how far a little local sailing regatta can take you. I've raced in it every year for the past 15 years, and it's just fantastic to see the smiles on the kids' faces, the laughs, the irreverence, the jokes, and the good time had by all. So my little message from AAAA this week is have fun, sail fast, and enjoy life on the water. Bye.
Maybe we should change our claim to enjoy life on the water. I like that a lot. Mm-hmm. And Alistair, thank you very much. And most of you will know he is the immediate past president of Australian Sailing, and he sent along some pictures, and I will do my best to narrate with some music in the background here. There's the Meetung Yacht Club, aforementioned. It's about 2.5 hours east of Melbourne in the state of Victoria in Australia. There's I guess an organizational meeting. I assume that's Alistair third from the right. I'm not 100% sure. We didn't have a chance to talk. I was going to try to get some more, info on these slides, but just an amazing regatta, including the Tazar, and I assume that's Alistair sailing with his daughter, and I'm not sure, in the Tazer, and other classes as well. It's just a big festival of sailing, a family festival at that. There's another just fabulous photo. And speaking of dogs in boats, there's a little kid in an Opti, I guess, in front, or maybe another RS, I don't know. The race committee. Mm-hmm. Easter Regatta at Meetung Yacht Club. Tasers and an Opti.
Looks like fun.
Doesn't it look nice?
Yep.
More action around the waterfront. There was an Easter bunny I saw on one of those boats. Nice stuff. Alistair Murray, thank you very much for that.
My little message from AAAA this week is have fun, sail fast, and enjoy life on the water. Bye.
I just wanted to reprise that from the end of his video because we appreciate him so much.
Indeed.
And Alistair's always musically introduced by the Royal Naval Band in Australia, playing, of course, Waltzing Matilda.
Right.
You'll come a waltzing with me. Awesome's Alistair. Awesome Alistair's. Alistair's awesome Aussie anecdote for today. Mm-hmm. Show number 832, Friday the 9th. Just a little America's Cup note here, since we've been on the Cup here for a bit. Nice one, Alistair. And look at the comments coming in. Yeah, good stuff. AC38 Cup date. You may have seen in Magnus the Magnificent's blog post yesterday about the Italians. You'd think this was an earth-shaking event, but Marco Gridoni posted, I guess, on his Instagram, he, the young sailor, superb Italian sailor who was with Luna Rossa in Barcelona, is apparently back with them again, sailing their AC40, and they've also, in addition to the AC40, they've got that surrogate boat that they're apparently going to be sailing as well. Magnus's headline yesterday was clever Magnus. White smoke in Italy, not referring to the Pope in this case. The 38th America's Cup officially started yesterday. Did you miss it? Well, no, I'm not sure this is an official start to anything, but if Magnus is, he's worked for Mr. Dalton in the last Cup, and I'm sure he's hoping to do the same again. So he's probably not wanting to bite the hand that in the past has fed him. This opening paragraph in his post on the Rule 69 blog, though, I raised a few eyebrows. Much to the chagrin of the doubting naysayers, reveling in perceived and fabricated chaos theories, and drinking the poisonous Kool-Aid of departing losers. Wonder who he's talking about there. The 38th America's Cup quietly got underway yesterday with the Italians thoroughly enjoying what they called the first splashdown of 2025 on the Bay of Angels at their team base in the southern end of Sardinia in Cagliari. That was MTM, Magnus the Magnificent, Wheatley, writing in his Rule 69 blog yesterday. To be fair, the only thing on there that is Luna Rossa, no longer Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli, it's just Luna Rossa for the moment, and Pirelli has also gone away. They are not going to apparently re-up for the Cup, or so one hears. So it's Luna Rossa, and I guess Prada still, obviously, because it's that family. The only thing on their website is from the 23rd of January, nothing since. The Italian president of the Republic meets the Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli team. Nice ceremony. I've been there at the equivalent, what's it called, in Rome. I've been there negotiating protocols with the former president. Or he was chief of staff, I guess, for the president. But what's that? What is that? Come on, help me out, those of you in Italy. That's the equivalent of their White House in Italian. What's the name of that great
I don't know.
facility in Rome that is where the president and his staff, not the prime minister, they're in Parliament. They have offices in Parliament. That's the only thing on their website. So if the Luna Rossa team are going again, are enthusiastic about the arrangements for the next Cup, well, Julia?
Yes?
Nothing since January on their website, but it was nice to see that thing from Mr. Gradoni. He is a superb sailor, and that was on, as I said, on the Luna Rossa website, 23 January 25. I don't think it's called Casablanca, Clark Chapin. It's called, no, it's not the Capitoleum, it's something else. I'll think of it. Maybe my aged brain will dig that up here in a sec. Nonetheless, and Magnus's post notwithstanding, there is precious little good news coming out of the Cup. Magnus even now has been writing in that same article, not the Coliseum Fritz Miller. Even Magnus is saying Greece is off, or all but off, as we reported to you 2 weeks ago when through our various FOSI sources, we're able to parse the thinking going on in Athens with the wife of the prime minister. They'd like to do it. Apparently they have the money to host the Cup in Greece, but not until 2029. So I don't know what's going on at the squadron, but they have delegated still, and apparently in talking with various of our friends in New Zealand, there seems no appetite at the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron to retake control of the Cup, as they are the defender trustee. They're the ones that are in charge. They're the ones that should be making the decision. The deed is quite clear and explicit that the Cup does not become the property of the team that wins it. It is held in trust by the club that wins it. And then the club has to operate under the deed of gift. And when they accept the Cup, by the way, and I know that Mark Holland will know this, there's a document called the Assignment and Acceptance that the club has to sign, agreeing to certain things, including abiding by the deed of gift and adjudicating any disputes in the courts of New York. Okay, that trustee is Croutonic. They are upside down. They are, again, I will say, the worst trustee in Cup history. Yeah, thank you, Clark Chapin. Chigi, Palazzo Chigi. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. We'll leave it there. and wrap the show up on happier notes. As Yarvahe says, they should be ashamed, not a defense in Auckland, and then this. Exactly right, Yarvahe. Well said, better said than I. We've been updating you on this cool regatta going on at Lake Garda, the IQ Foil Youth Intergalactics. That's not what they call it. They call it the Internationals for Youth and Junior Sailors, which are U19, I think, is youth, and U17, I think I have that right. It's been going on all week. They've got great visuals, including that one. You liked that the other day, Julia, when I showed you that one.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And just to reprise, there's 215 registered sailors from 23 nations at the IQ Foil Youth. That's an Olympic class now. That's the windsurfer in the Olympics. It was in Marseille, will be again. Youth and Junior International Games in Torbole at Garda confirm their position as one of the largest and most competitive youth and junior events on the IQ Foil, this particular regatta. Racing resumed, we told you, on Tuesday. It resumed Wednesday with the first possible start, yada, yada. And it carried on through today, and I have today's video, and it wraps, I'm pretty sure, tomorrow. Julie, you were just saying that Lake Garda is just so beautiful.
Oh, it is.
Fabulous. Fabulous. And Bravo Zulu to them. That class, I wouldn't last in that I wouldn't last for 10 seconds, let alone an upwind leg, let alone a whole race. I mean, the pumping is legal, and man. Okay, that brings us to the last leg, and we like to end also on happy news, on good video especially, and this is a cool event also going. We're kind of on Italy now. We've switched from Australia to Italy. The 2025 Tre Golfi Sailing Week, the three Gulfs, including Napoli, and Sorrento, started a couple days ago and is carrying on. And here is their first video. I'm sure we'll have more for you next Tuesday. That could be the site, the venue of the next America's Cup if Naples gets its act together, or so we keep hearing.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing venue. This is the ORC, the ostensible ORC national championship, as opposed to IRC. It's the other big rating rule in offshore sailing. And this event carries on here for a week or so. Well done. Bravo Zulu, and a cool event.
Yes.
No wonder Italy is such a fantastic sailing nation. It's beautiful. People are passionate about the sport. Maybe compassionate. Maybe compassionate too, Julia. Sure. Who would know? That brings us to the D block, Julia.
Oh, yes.
And do you want to introduce the name of this segment?
Whiskey Tango Foxtrot.
Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, which stands for what? What the fudge?
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
We're going to have an English lesson and a grammar lesson today, thanks to our Fozy. This from Bannero. He says, a tsunami, the T is silent. In honest, the H is silent. In psychology, the P is silent. In knife, the K is silent. And in wife, you can read it.
The husband is silent.
The husband is silent. Was that the case in your marriage with the late, great captain?
Oh, no, we're both talkers.
Yeah, that's for sure. What a great guy he was, too.
He was.
Captain Conrad. That's from Bannero. And then the next one is grammar. And, you know, it's true. I keep talking to my daughter, who's really quite good. She's well educated and she's pretty good with her as a web designer and so on. As I watch this generation, the current generation, try to rewrite history, there are two things I am sure of. It will be misspelled and there will be no punctuation.
Yes.
And that's from doing all this online stuff. Ed Worley sent that in as well. Thank you, Ed.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, Julia, this is how I grew up watching the volleyball players. And I was thinking, someday I'll have a body like that. Greg Phillips down in Brisbane sent that. I think he's in Brisbane. He's on the Gold Coast anyway, isn't he? In northeastern Australia.
Yes.
Which, Julia, brings us to the finish line. And you like to say?
Yes, please like, follow, and share. Amuse yourself no end by reading the comments, but also share particularly because that helps us.
Well, and comments, as we always say, are welcome even in replay. And those of you who support us via Patreon, it's much appreciated. I hope you like the Zoom software. We've had that for some time. That costs $15 a month. Okay, it's not a princely sum, but now I've got some other software called Zoom ISO, which you saw Mark today on his box, all clear, no graphics, no names. It was just really clear and solid the whole time. So that's an additional sum per month. So we appreciate all the support we can get to help keep us and our Studio B.
Oh, yes, and then are elaborate and well used.
On the air. And pay my landlady some rent, so she can fart through silk, as my dad used to say.
Find some silk.
Oh, find some silk. Thanks, everybody. We appreciate it very much. And coming up this weekend, as we said at the top of the show, can you ID that beautiful yacht club, Julia? That's from a perspective. That's a perspective one often does not see. That is Harbor Court in Newport, Rhode Island, from behind what kind of a tree? Is that a cherry tree? Is that a rose tree? What the beautiful, it's blooming. Things are nice. Tomorrow is the annual
cherries
commissioning of New York Yacht Club's Harbor Court. That image courtesy of Vice Commodore Claire Harrington, our super Fosi, who is there and will be, along with her Commodore and Rear Commodore and the rest of the group, holding court there. They got meetings today. She extended her apologies for not joining us in the chat today.
Nice.
That's tomorrow. Also tomorrow, anybody can guess what that is? That is the IMOCAs. That's the Vendée Globe. And the prize-giving ceremony for the Vendée Globe 2024-25 takes place tomorrow, the 10th. In Les Sables d'Olonne. It's an opportunity for Tip and Shaft, from which we got this info, to take a snapshot of the various projects to date and the new cycle that is beginning already for the IMOCA class. And long story short, quote, we're in a period of transition, unquote. In one sentence, Antoine Mermot sums up the general context prevailing in this spring of 2025 for the IMOCA boats. Quote, it has not escaped anyone's attention that the global economic situation is not easy, unquote, continues the class president. This generates a fair amount of uncertainty and complicates the work of the skippers and the teams in their search for partners, sponsors. For a while, we feared that the situation would be very complicated, but in the end, it's not that bad. It's not euphoria, but it's not as the French would say, a catastrophe. Or the Italians or the Spanish. It's not catastrophic either. So that's tomorrow, their prize giving, and it sounds like they're coming along for the next Vendée Globe. Sounds pretty cool. Finally, on Sunday, we will be celebrating, not everybody, the Brits did it in March, others of you around the globe on different times, but tomorrow, so rather Sunday, this weekend for many of us, is Mother's Day. And I have this graphic from Chelsea Yacht Club. Final Yacht Club wheel salute today. I had no idea there was a Chelsea Yacht Club anywhere other than in Chelsea, Massachusetts, outside of Boston, near where Mark Hammond lives. But here it is, Julia. That is the Chelsea Yacht Club.
That's
on the Hudson River.
Looks good.
It's a cool club on the east side of the Hudson River, north of New York City, south of Albany. Chelsea on the Hudson is the town. It's a quaint little town, beautiful town. And they are celebrating Mother's Day. There's where they are, the Chelsea Yacht Club up the Hudson.
Mm-hmm.
You know what else is up there? You go a little further north, you see what's up there? Right there. Were you there, Julia?
I was not.
Woodstock.
I was too old and sophisticated at the time for Woodstock.
Yeah, there's a Chelsea Yacht Club, Alistair says, in Melbourne. I did not know there was a Chelsea Yacht Club there either, but there's probably a handful around the world, including this one in Albany, or not in, but near, up toward Albany, I should say, New York. And they were founded a long time ago, 1881, as you can probably see in this slide. Mm-hmm. And finally, as a tribute to mothers all around the world, alive and past, including my own late great mother, Janice, this beautiful shot from the deck of the Chelsea Yacht Club looking west across the Hudson. Fabulous shot. Sunday is Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to all who celebrate it and beyond. A pretty club. It is indeed.
It
Alamo, yeah. Clark Chapin knows about Chelsea, Michigan, which is a town next door to where our club is on Portage Lake. And Chelsea, Michigan does not have a yacht club as far as I know. The closest yacht club would be our home club of Portage Yacht Club, Clark Chapin. Sunday, happy Mother's Day. Next week, Commodores, ladies and gentlemen, we'll have a special Pedro's personal perspective.
Aha.
He will reveal, Peter Stevenson, there in the middle, looking very happy with a big smile on his face and some famous Aussie yachties in that photo. I assume that's at the Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron, but I'm not 100% sure. But Peter will reveal his latest project. Talk about alliteration. Peter's project on Pedro's personal perspective.
Gotta be a good one.
Next week. Thanks, Peter Stevenson, for that photo. And there's some cool people in that picture, all of whom will be revealed, along with Peter's project next week. I'm not sure Tuesday or Friday, probably Tuesday. We shall see. Thank you to everybody who gave us audio, video, and images for today's show. Julia, final thoughts?
No, I just left with, again, the feeling how wonderful this sport is. Yeah.
How varied.
Yes.
How much variety there is.
Yes.
How smart the people are. Just look at the Fozy.
Yeah. I mean, oh my gosh.
And you know, you all, I come off the air and I'm just happy to have, gotten through one show in one piece because I'm surrounded by so many smart people. Starting with you.
Starting with you.
You're too kind. Thanks, everybody. We hope to see you on Tuesday. We hope you have a great weekend wherever in the world you are. Go sailing, whether down under or up here in the Northern Hemisphere. If you do, sail fast, sail safe, and have fun. See you Tuesday. Ciao for now.